41 Lost Diary. Before long, he heard Harry and Ron outside, both sounding anxious. They knocked on the compartment door where Cyrus and Hermione were hiding. "Hurry up, we have to go." A sharp voice answered from inside. I really don't want to come out. You two go on without me." "Hermione, we know Millicent looks ugly. No one will recognize you," Harry urged. "No, really, I can't. You two go. You're wasting time," Hermione insisted. Harry glanced at Ron. Ron's expression was so bewildered it made him look even more like Goyle. "All right, at least we still have Ginny, Malfoy?" His voice died in his throat when a figure at the doorway nearly made him leap. How could Draco Malfoy be here? Had their plan been exposed? Harry quickly noticed something odd. The Malfoy in front of them was wearing a Gryffindor robe. "Are you Ginny?" he asked. Cyrus, standing there with Malfoy's face, nodded. Ron stared as if he couldn't believe it. How could someone have Malfoy's face and also pass as Ginny? "You're right, I can't go out like this," Cyrus said with a helpless shrug while wearing Malfoy's features, which made Harry want to smack him twice. "Sorry, Ginny, you look terrible." "Thanks, you look stupid too. Time's almost up. The potion Hermione brewed doesn't last long. You have to hurry." Cyrus rolled his eyes. After ushering Harry away, he said to Hermione, "You wait here. I think I can use Malfoy's appearance to gather information elsewhere." "Okay, go quickly," Hermione replied, eager for him to leave. Cyrus didn't bother changing. With a flick of his wand, his robe changed to green, and he slipped out, heading straight for the owlery without hesitation. He muttered under his breath, "I solemnly swear that I am up to no good." Words spilled across the blank parchment in front of him in neat strokes as if by hidden ink. "Dumbledore is in the headmaster's office, and the other professors are in their own rooms. There's someone in the owlery. Malfoy. Why is he in the owlery? Good, he's left." Cyrus frowned at the note. He hadn't seen Malfoy linger. He had left quickly. Casting a disillusionment charm over himself, Cyrus followed the path Malfoy had taken. He found Malfoy walking along reading a letter, probably something from Narcissa or Lucius. Ordinarily, such mail would be delivered straight to the dormitory by a house elf, but perhaps the Malfoys were in some sort of trouble and Mr. Weasley had been handling things. Malfoy opened a newspaper after reading the letter, and his face brightened. Cyrus glanced down and saw the paper reporting on Harry and Ron's arrival and on Mr. Weasley being reprimanded. Lucius Malfoy must have applied pressure. Mr. Weasley would be distracted now. After Malfoy passed, Cyrus headed back upstairs to the owlery. There were few birds there, mostly the school's public owls. Cyrus produced the letter he'd prepared in advance, found Draco Malfoy's family owl, and released it. The bird didn't hesitate. It had no idea its sender was an imposter. As the owl launched into the wind and snow, Cyrus couldn't help the small curve of his lips. Now it was time to push Dumbledore out of Hogwarts. If his plan worked, this would unsettle the school enough. "Did you find out anything?" Cyrus asked when he met Harry and Ron at the entrance to the girls' bathroom. The two boys had mostly transformed back, their robes hanging comically large on them. "Malfoy isn't the heir," Harry said. "So our work was for nothing?" Ron asked. "Not entirely," said Ron, out of breath as he closed the bathroom door behind them. "We still haven't figured out who's behind the attacks, but I'm writing to my dad tomorrow. I'll ask him to check beneath the Malfoys' drawing room." Ron knocked heavily on Hermione's cubicle door. "Hermione, come out. We have a lot to tell you." "Go away," Hermione squealed. "What's wrong?" Ron asked. "You should be back to normal now." A shrill, delighted voice cut him off as moaning Myrtle popped out from the crack of the cubicle door. She looked blissfully smug, as if she had stumbled on some great, horrible revelation. "Oh, just you wait," she said. "It's terrible." The lock slid and Hermione stumbled out, sobbing. Her face was smeared with dark fur, her eyes glinted yellow, and two long, pointy ears stuck up through her hair. "It was a cat hair," she wailed. Millicent must own a cat, but this potion wasn't supposed to be for animal transfiguration." "Unlucky," Ron said, but the corner of his mouth twitched. He could already see the mocking for days. Myrtle cackled. "It's okay, Hermione," Cyrus said. Despite finding her appearance oddly cute in a furry sort of way, he hated to see her so upset. "We'll take you to the hospital wing. Madame Pomfrey never asks too many questions." It took them a long time to coax Hermione out of the bathroom. Myrtle's raucous laughter spurred them on. Just wait. Everyone will know you have a tail. The ghost shrieked. Don't worry, there are plenty of precedents for this. It's curable, as long as you don't get Lockhart, Cyrus added, which nearly made Ron laugh. After delivering Hermione to the hospital wing, Cyrus planned to return the body to Ginny. The intense strain from the recent possession, wearing someone else, using someone else, had taken its toll on Ginny. She needed solid rest over the Christmas holidays. Cyrus told Ginny a few last things to help her avoid slipping up in public. So Malfoy isn't the heir, and our lead is gone again? Ginny summed up their progress. It had been a nearly wasted effort. Not completely wasted, Cyrus said. At least Ron found a flaw in the Malfoy household, and I found out something odd. Your brother Percy has been seeing the Ravenclaw prefect in the girls' bathroom. Ginny laughed weakly. All right, don't worry. I believe things will get better. But something unexpected happened. When the Christmas holiday ended, Cyrus suddenly discovered he could no longer contact Ginny. The diary that had been their link had been opened, and whoever had opened it was no longer the same person who had closed it. Thanks to reader 13388459677456328 for the 10,000 Kedian coins reward. Is this what Dad said, the thing that can open the Chamber of Secrets? Draco held the diary up, turning it over in his hands, but he couldn't see anything unusual about it. Worse, it looked like something from the Muggle world, and that thought made his skin crawl. He pinched the corner of the cover between two fingers, feeling as if even the touch left him tarnished. Still, if he wanted to be Slytherin's heir, he would have to put up with some filth. "A Parisium!" he barked. The diary didn't react. Draco scowled. "And Father told me to be respectful to the owner," he muttered, annoyed. He flipped the cover open and stared at the single name written inside in a neat, cold hand. Riddle. The name told him enough. It meant the owner wasn't a pure blood. He sneered inwardly. Half-blood would be tolerable, a mudblood, unforgivable. The thought of Hermione Granger made him briefly ill. All right, then. He set the book flat on the desk, picked up a fine quill, dipped it in ink, and wrote inside the diary in a bold hand. "Show me your secrets." Nothing happened. Draco sighed and scrawled sharply, "Show me your secrets." Still nothing. Ginny stood in the middle of her common room, surrounded by 4 of her brothers, Fred, George, Ron, and Percy, and flanked by Harry and Hermione so she couldn't slip away. She'd come back to find her dormitory ransacked, trunks upended and clothes tossed everywhere. She kept picking at the mess and whispering, dazed, "It's gone, it's gone." They all wanted to know what had been taken. Everyone, that is, except the twins. Fred and George were unnervingly pale. They kept exchanging glances as if something very important had vanished. "Is it really gone?" Fred asked, voice tight. Ginny could only nod. "What was it?" Ron and Percy demanded together. They were both impatient. The question seemed simple enough, but neither Ginny nor the twins would answer directly. George let out a long, hopeless sigh. "It's our best chance of catching whoever's been sneaking around," he said. "Without it, we might never find the culprit." Ginny blinked. The twins knew about Mr. Riddle? She had never told them anything about the diary. In her mind, the diary was the only thing that made sense. Of course, Mr. Riddle's book must hold some clue, and of course, the Slytherin heir would want it. Hearing the twins call it the hope of catching the culprit fit that idea too. Hermione and Percy both suggested going to a professor immediately, but the suggestion was cut off by 3 simultaneous emphatic no. Ginny, Fred, and George shook their heads so hard they looked offended. If the Marauder's map, or if it was the diary, fell into the professor's hands, would students who broke the rules still have a chance? If the diary were handed over, what would happen to Mr. Riddle? "Absolutely not," Fred and George said. Percy frowned. "What are you 3 hiding from me?" He started, offended, then raised the specter he always used as a threat. "I advise you not to lead Ginny astray, or I'll tell Mum." "No," Ginny snapped, and her face went white. If her mother got involved, there would be a scene, and Mr. Riddle, she couldn't let that happen. She had one weapon. She thrust it forward without hesitation. "You can't tell anyone, Percy," she said. "If you do, I'll tell your secret." Percy went red and abruptly fell quiet. The rest of them watched in stunned curiosity. Percy had authority like no other, and it was almost unheard of for him to be cowed. With his dignity intact but his mouth shut, He ushered the others away, leaving Ginny alone at last, still hollow-eyed and fretting. Not long after, Harry, Ron, and Hermione slipped back into the room. Harry's face was serious. "Listen, Ginny, what exactly is missing?" he asked. "If it's important, tell us. We can help." Ron and Hermione nodded and pressed in. Ginny hesitated, caught between fear and trust. Ron's patience snapped a little. "I can't believe this," he said. "We've been through so much together. Who drank that polyjuice potion? Who broke 100 rules to find out what Malfoy's up to? Don't you trust us?" Ginny almost told them that the person who had worked with them wasn't one of them at all, but Mr. Riddle. Still, Harry, Ron, and Hermione had been loyal. They had helped her before. Eventually, she nodded. "You have to promise you won't tell anyone," she said, looking straight at them. "I promise." Ron said it first, too eager, but sincere. The three of them exchanged quick, solemn glances and gave a vow, not magically binding, but earnest enough. "Come somewhere private," Ginny said. The common room might have been empty now, but she didn't want to be overheard. She led them to a disused classroom tucked away in a forgotten wing of the castle. The three of them, used to the familiar nooks and crannies of Hogwarts, looked astonished as they followed. "Hogwarts actually has places like this?" Ron breathed. Ginny stopped, swallowed, and told them. "A diary," she said. "A diary." Harry and Hermione both frowned. What could a diary possibly do? "This one isn't ordinary," Ginny said. "It's Mr. Riddle's diary." "Riddle?" Ron's voice went up an octave. "Tom Riddle?" 43. "Am I really a genius?" "Wait, stop, hold on a moment." Harry looked at Ron with a bewildered expression, as if he'd just found out Ron had been seeing another man behind his back. "So you know this Tom Riddle?" "Of course I know him. I'll never forget that name as long as I live," Ron said, annoyance making his voice sharp. "Remember when Malfoy and I were dueling on the Quidditch pitch? I cast a jinx on him." "On yourself," Hermione cut in. "That's not the point." "Then say what is the point." "I am," Ron exploded. "Later, Professor McGonagall punished me by making me work for Filch, and I spent the whole night in the trophy room polishing Tom Riddle's trophies. Moral Award, Outstanding Student Award, Special Services to the School Award, especially that Special Services one. It was huge. I spent nearly half an hour on it. It's a good thing it didn't say what he did to earn it, or I might still be there cleaning." Harry and Hermione were still absorbing the coincidence when Ginny said something that stunned them even more. "Mr. Riddle won that award because he caught the last person who opened the Chamber of Secrets 50 years ago." "What?" The three of them sprang to their feet, staring at Ginny in unison. Never before had they felt so close to the truth. "Who was it?" Harry demanded. In the cramped, dust-laden chamber, their breaths came faster. Ginny shook her head. "Mr. Riddle didn't tell me." At that, the three of them sagged back onto the floor. Harry blinked, then caught at a loose end. "He didn't tell you? What do you mean he didn't tell you?" "Because the diary has a mind of its own. Mr. Riddle put his memories into it. Last term, I was always talking to him, and after the chamber was opened again, he said he wanted to find the culprit. Now the diary's been stolen. Mr. Riddle must have discovered something, and whoever stole it was after that." Ginny's voice broke as tears formed. Hermione thought she couldn't be surprised anymore that day, and then realized she was wrong. Ron was white with dread. "You talked to something that has a mind of its own. What if it cursed you?" "Mr. Riddle wouldn't," Ginny said, angry and hurt. She knew others would be skeptical after hearing about the diary. "He wouldn't hurt me. He's my friend. He helped me a lot, taught me spells, showed me things in transfiguration and potions, helped me with counter curses. If it weren't for Mr. Riddle, I might still be spitting slugs." Ron went bright red. Now they all understood why Ginny had been so withdrawn and yet so accomplished. "But it has a mind of its own. If it were me, I wouldn't trust it," he muttered, still cautious. "Tell me, do I look like someone who'd been in danger? If Mr. Riddle wanted to hurt me, he'd have done it ages ago. He even helped me with my homework." "What?" Ron and Hermione both shrieked, the same open-mouthed expression on their faces. Hermione was aghast. "This is terrible. This Riddle can't be a good person. How could he do such a thing?" Ron, on the other hand, was incandescent. "This is amazing. He must be brilliant. Why didn't I get that notebook?" Hermione gave him a sharp kick. Harry tried to pull things together. "But who stole the diary then? It must be someone from Gryffindor. A girl, Ron said without hesitation. Otherwise, no one could get into the girls' dormitory. Not necessarily, Hermione reminded them. Don't forget we snuck into Slytherin's common room a few weeks ago. The mention of Polyjuice widened the list of suspects. It could be Malfoy, though Malfoy isn't the heir of Slytherin. The four of them froze, stuck in a stalemate. Harry felt a hot, raw frustration, like fruit about to ripen and then falling unripe. Inside the diary, something very different was happening. Cyrus felt a raw, searing pain, as if everything he had been building were being ripped away. It had taken him forever to win Ginny Weasley's trust and to achieve even this temporary freedom. Now the diary had been taken from her, from him. He didn't know who had it. Had Dumbledore changed his mind and decided to destroy him rather than use him to reach Harry? Panic fanned inside him, but he forced it down. He needed patience and charm to be resurrected. First, he had to know who had the diary. A line of sharp handwriting appeared across the blank page. Show me your secrets. Show my secrets, Cyrus thought. He wanted to punch through the paper. He made himself stay calm. If this new owner knew who he was, he would be dangerous. Too dangerous. He had to play along and find out. So he wrote, steadying himself. Who are you? On the other side of the conversation, Draco Malfoy grinned when the diary answered. He hadn't expected that writing to it would actually get a reply. Am I really a genius? He wrote to himself, savoring the thought for a heartbeat, then turned back to the diary. My name is Draco Malfoy. My father told me this diary can help me open the Chamber of Secrets. Your master must be the last person who opened the chamber, right? Tell me where he is. I want him to serve me. Lucius Malfoy's warning had already been shoved to the back of Draco's mind. Soon enough, he convinced himself he would be the heir of Slytherin. Why should he grovel? But the diary, Cyrus, was stunned. Draco Malfoy? And Lucius had sent him to the diary? Cyrus felt as if he had shot himself in the foot. He tried to make sense of it. Lucius would not have openly betrayed Lord Voldemort. At this stage, Lucius was still opposed to Dumbledore's school authority. Maybe the message Lucius had sent had been misunderstood or misdelivered. Regardless, Cyrus had to adapt. Never mind, Malfoy would do just as well. He would have to win the boy's trust quickly. 44. Cause and effect. Gaining Draco's trust had been easier than Cyrus expected. He knew much of the credit belonged to Lucius. Draco idolized his father, and when Lucius hinted that a certain diary might help open the Chamber of Secrets, Draco accepted it without question. While posing as Draco, Cyrus learned the whole story. He had even taken the family owl, Malfoy's own bird didn't recognize the imposter, and used it to send a carefully worded letter to Malfoy Manor. In that letter, he hinted, subtly but sinisterly, that Draco's fate now lay in his parents' hands, pressing Lucius to cooperate in removing Dumbledore from Hogwarts. The ruse worked. The Malfoys panicked, and a dangerous misunderstanding was set in motion. Time slid back to Christmas. Malfoy Manor, Wiltshire. It's Christmas. They should finally quiet down, Narcissa said sourly. Her displeasure had painted over her pretty face, making her appear unapproachable. She had reason to be on edge. The Ministry had hounded the family all year, searching for dark artifacts hidden by House Malfoy. Lucius had quietly neutralized the worst of the problems, but the manor had made enemies for years. Unless they stripped the house bare, the searches would go on. He'd even decided, for the sake of reducing risk, to let Draco spend Christmas at Hogwarts, something Narcissa resented. She had wanted to spend the holiday with her son. I've already pushed the Daily Prophet and the Ministry as far as I could, Lucius replied. I made sure the Weasley mess got blown up. Arthur's foolishness, and Potter. He didn't need to finish. He had long loathed the Weasleys, and he'd acted on that hatred over the summer. Among other things, he'd kept a diary the Dark Lord had once entrusted to him. It looked like a Muggle object. Lucius might have discarded it had it not been explicitly left for safekeeping. He had once asked the Dark Lord why he wanted Lucius to look after such a mundane thing. The answer then had been chilling. The diary was the key to opening the Chamber of Secrets. If Voldemort had been alive, Lucius would never have handed it on, but the Dark Lord had been gone 11 years. So Lucius had used what he had to stir trouble, scandalized the flying car incident in the Prophet, leaned on friendly Ministry officials until Arthur Weasley was a laughingstock. The searches might finally be settling down, but that only made Narcissa more anxious about Draco at Hogwarts. "Should we fetch him?" she asked. Draco wrote, "He said there have been attacks at Hogwarts. What if the chamber has been opened? I'm afraid he'll be in danger." Lucius shrugged. "Only a mudblood was attacked. Draco isn't involved. I wrote to him. I told him to lay low. He knows nothing of this. There's no reason to panic." They watched the family owls circle and land. Narcissa plucked the envelope from its leg and opened it with an eager hand. A few seconds later, her face drained of color. She clapped a hand to her mouth as if the world lurched. Lucius snatched the letter. His eyes skimmed the first lines, and then a cold, suffocating tremor ran through him. "My dearest servant, Lucius Malfoy. I am truly sorry, Lucius. Have I been out of sight so long you have forgotten my power? How dare you give away what I entrusted to you to keep? Perhaps you, like so many others, think the Dark Lord is dead, defeated by a child. You have disowned me to save your own skin, have you not?" Lucius froze. He read on, each sentence like a blow. "I admit I am weakened, but killing is still easy for me. You owe me atonement for your mistake. The task is simple. Get Dumbledore expelled from Hogwarts. Make sure the Chamber of Secrets is opened again. Ensure more blood is spilled. And a Merry Christmas, Lucius." The letter was short, but the color had fled from both their faces. "It can't be true," Narcissa whispered. "He's been gone 11 years. How could he be back?" Lucius's voice had the brittle edge of a man trying to force calm. He knew there were only a few people who would know about that diary, and he knew the consequences if Voldemort or his memory demanded recompense. There was only one course that might protect Draco. "If Dumbledore can't find the culprit," Lucius said, forcing the words out, "then as a school governor I can move to have him removed. But we need leverage. The number of victims must grow. One mudblood won't convince them. Draco must be seen as the instrument. If we make it appear the Dark Lord has returned and praises Draco, that will be the proof they need." He turned and called sharply, "Dobby!" The house elf shuffled into the room, skin puckered and scarred in new places, eyes wide and terrified. Dobby bowed so low he almost touched the floor. "Master, Dobby is here?" it squeaked. Lucius didn't care to ask how the elf had acquired fresh wounds. His only thought was to stop whatever punishment the Dark Lord might inflict and to shield his son. He set the letter down and reached for a fresh sheet of parchment, his decision already made. "Dobby," he said, voice steady with authority, "go to Hogwarts. Find Ginny Weasley, take the Black Diary from her, and bring it to Draco. Give Draco this letter." Dobby trembled at the command, but servility and fear compelled it to nod. Lucius sealed his instructions with the cold certainty of a man convinced he was acting in his family's best interest, however dangerous the path. Me! Draco Malfoy could hardly contain himself. "You can really let me open the Chamber of Secrets?" His eyes glittered, his heart erupted with excitement, an air of Slytherin. This was the honor of a lifetime. In Britain, most pureblood families revered Salazar Slytherin. If he could inherit Slytherin's secrets, who knew what he could become? As his father had said, Hogwarts would be purified. Those filthy mudbloods would be cleared out. Colin Creevey and Justin were only the beginning. I, Draco Malfoy, will inherit Slytherin's will. Then suddenly, his excitement stalled. He had only just received this diary. Who had owned it before? Not the long-dead heir from 50 years ago, but the person who had petrified those two students recently. Draco demanded an answer. Cyrus did not relish talking about Ginny, and answered curtly, "A pathetic coward. He panicked the moment the professors started to watch. Otherwise, your father wouldn't have let you work with me." That made sense to Draco. "So my father thinks I'm more reliable," he wrote, utterly pleased. "Of course, I'm a Malfoy." Cyrus let the boy's vanity do most of the work. A hint was all it took. Malfoy was already intoxicated with the idea of seeing Hermione Granger become the next victim. "Let's do it now," Draco urged. "No," Cyrus refused without hesitation. "Now's not a good time. I know you're not a coward, Draco, but if we're discovered, it'll be a disaster. We need to make them drop their guard first. I can, however, let you see the Chamber of Secrets." Draco blinked, deflated for a moment, then thrilled again. "How do we go?" he asked. "I need to use your body," Cyrus admitted. "You want to possess me?" Draco shrieked. He knew how dangerous dark objects could be. Who knew what would happen if he let something take hold of him? You don't dare, he spat. Cyrus fired 3 questions in quick succession, dismantling Draco's resistance. Do you think I would harm you? Do you think your father would give you something that would threaten your safety? Do you really believe I'd risk you for nothing? Malfoy folded. All right, how do we do it? You don't have to do anything, Cyrus wrote. Just press your face to the diary. Draco leaned forward. Silver mist unfurled at the edge of his vision, like damp threads clinging to his skin. Before he could pull back, the threads drew him into a dark abyss. When he came to, it was as if someone else's awareness looked out from his body. Cyrus had taken hold. Cyrus first drank a small draught of life from Draco, then planned to keep his promise and take the boy to the chamber. He hadn't earned Draco's trust the way he had with Ginny. Ginny had trusted him blindly, but Draco's loyalty was brittle. Possession would only last a short time. He still needed to win the boy further, but first there was something else he wanted, the Marauders map. He had taken it from Fred and George and hidden it away, thinking fewer people knew of it the better. He had tucked the folded map into Draco's sleeve. Cyrus, now in Draco's body, left and walked toward the third-floor lavatory. At his command, the wash basin swung aside, revealing the secret passage and a wall of blackness. Draco's own senses returned in that dark, cavernous place. Light was dim, but enough to make out shapes. He felt sticky and wet, as if lying in mud, but unfamiliar fear pushed that discomfort into the background. Above him arched a high dome. On either side of the chamber, stone serpents rose from black water, their heads poised and terrible. The Chamber of Secrets. The thought was instant and triumphant. He sat up quickly. The diary that had been resting on his chest slid to the floor. He snatched it up, flipping it open. "This is the Chamber of Secrets," the page read. Draco stared. The diary had brought him here. No wonder his father had called it the key to opening the chamber. All fear drained away, replaced by exhilaration. He stalked the empty expanse as if he were its master. "Where's the monster?" he demanded, scribbling into the diary. "Where is the monster Slytherin bred to rid us of mudbloods?" "You cannot summon that monster without Parseltongue," Cyrus answered on the page. "If you do not speak Parseltongue, you will be attacked." "Parseltongue? Harry Potter speaks Parseltongue. Was it him?" Draco wrote, incredulous. He could not believe that the golden boy Potter could be the heir of Slytherin. "Of course not him," the diary replied. "Then who? Who else speaks Parseltongue?" Draco pressed, and for a moment the page was blank. Then 2 letters appeared, written in a hand like the rest. Me. I received 2 offers today, still hesitating which one to choose. 46. Alchemy to the roots. Your Parseltongue? Malfoy's voice carried equal parts surprise and envy. The name Tom Riddle meant little to him, at best a half-blood with a mediocre reputation, but the ability itself was priceless. For a Malfoy, the thought of commanding snakes inspired a dangerous kind of awe. Cyrus in the diary could see it in every tone. Then Draco said something that stopped him. "My mother's surname is Gaunt. I'm a descendant of Slytherin." Of course, this small, unknown little Tom was of Slytherin's line. No wonder he'd been able to open the chamber. Still, Draco's mood darkened. How had his own family never produced someone as legendary as Salazar Slytherin? If they had, the Malfoys would be the ones to intimidate all of Hogwarts. That thought soothed him a little. After all, he himself was now the chamber's heir. But a new irritation surfaced. If Tom Riddle in the diary could speak Parseltongue, why hadn't he shown the basilisk to him? What kind of heir refused to summon his monster for the rightful heir to see? "Little Tom," Malfoy demanded, "since you're a Parseltongue, why don't you show us something?" Cyrus felt the contempt behind the nickname. Dangerous as he was in the diary, he didn't need to be truly resurrected to make Draco regret that insolence. Still, he kept his tone mild. "I would if I could, but to speak Parseltongue, I must borrow your voice. If I use your mouth to speak, you'll never see the basilisk." "A basilisk?" Draco's surprise gave way to a predatory grin. "So that's what the creature in the chamber is, the king of serpents, of course." He paused. "But you mean I can't control it? You're only its vocal organ?" "If you have the courage and strength to face the basilisk alone, I don't mind lending you my voice," Cyrus said. "But you must understand, without my control, it will attack. Forgive it. It's eaten very little in nearly 1,000 years. The sewer rats haven't been enough." Draco went cold. "Then forget it," he said, voice clipped, and fell silent. The chamber felt unexpectedly empty. Statues loomed out of the gloom, carved stone snakes watched. For a moment, Draco's disappointment showed. This was it? The legendary chamber of Slytherin reduced to a few statues and dusty stone? Cyrus knew better. Slytherin's chamber had been, originally, a private classroom. Over the centuries, it had accumulated hidden manuscripts and experiments. Much of that knowledge had nourished Lord Voldemort during his rise, and now fed Cyrus as well. Dangerous experiments, failed transmutations, arcane tomes, anything that promised power had been collected and preserved. Rumors painted Slytherin as monstrous in appearance, but like Voldemort, he had once been a handsome young man. Both had experimented on themselves, seeking greater power and paying a price: disfigurement. Voldemort had built upon Slytherin's foundations, and yet could not escape the deformity those same experiments had wrought. Cyrus had absorbed the traces of both their work. He hungered for magical bloodline transformation, but he did not want to become a grotesque thing. That process would have to be handled with care. Not now, he thought. It would be pointless if he wasn't resurrected first. Sighing, Cyrus decided it was time to deepen Draco's trust. "You're wondering what else the chamber holds." Draco blinked. "How did you?" "It's not hard to guess," Cyrus answered smoothly. "If you want more power, I know where to go. Just lean your head over, like before." He turned the diary to another page. Draco, now practiced in the odd ritual, submitted himself again. Once Cyrus took control, he produced the Marauder's map, verified that the 8th floor corridor and the chamber outside were empty, then slipped from the chamber toward the room of requirement. "Give me a room to practice dark arts," he whispered, and the door obeyed. A dim, oppressive classroom waited within, stacked with shelved rows of dark arts grimoires. Some volumes were profoundly dangerous. Cyrus hid most of those away and left only simpler, less corrupting curses on display. Minor hexes that most young wizards already knew and that would not warp a personality while keeping Malfoy entertained. Satisfied, he returned the body to Draco. Malfoy was thrilled at the sight of the forbidden books, flattering Cyrus without reserve and eager to learn the more exciting spells. Cyrus let him. In the diary again, he turned his attention to the deeper, older texts, alchemical treatises and forbidden manuscripts that described roots of power far older than ordinary magic. He read, "Through the 22 paths of the Tree of Life, one ascends to the realm of archetypes. Demons water it with sin, skeletons cut it down. The 10 fundamental essences, fashioned by the celestial spheres, the 7 planets, by the fixed stars, the Empyrean, and the sublunary world, are the primal forces of God and the universe. Passing through the feminine pillar of mercy, the neutral pillar of mildness, and the masculine pillar of severity, the perfect spirit, thought, and idea coalesce into form, and the higher mind descends into matter, reaching the material world." The more Cyrus read, the more he felt himself sink into a vast, terrifying abyss. These alchemical writings hinted at origins beyond mundane magic, an almost primeval source. Were the 22 paths truly the way to a true philosopher's stone, or did they promise an even purer, more essential force? Ambition swelled within him. If his only aim was to be resurrected, he thought, then taking over Riddle's body would have been enough. Tom Riddle's form was gifted, powerful, yet it imposed limits. Becoming something neither wholly human nor wholly ghost, merging memory and flesh, had given Cyrus remarkable freedom, but it still felt like a cage. Now, having glimpsed the deeper mysteries contained in these forgotten pages, he hungered for more than mere return to life. He wanted transformation. Not the crude, disfiguring experiments that had ruined Slytherin and Voldemort, but a refined, ultimate perfection. A new kind of life, perfect and potent. But first, he had to be reborn. Only then would he have the means to pursue those roots, and only then could he begin the careful, precise work that might avoid the grotesque fates of those who had come before. For now, he returned to the present, teaching Draco just enough to keep him busy, keeping his secrets close and letting the chamber and its legacy wait until the moment he could reach deeper, down to the very roots of alchemy. Chapter 47, the epic documentary, The Legend of Draco, continues to air. After that, Draco was lost in the simple pleasure of learning new hexes. Cyrus didn't micromanage him, but he picked things up fast. Beyond charms, Draco had developed a real curiosity for small alchemical devices, an interest his father would never have permitted. Lucius considered fussing over alchemical doodads the same as neglecting proper study. In truth, Draco had a knack for it. When Cyrus noticed, he pounced. He began teaching Draco alchemy, and even brought him broken pieces from the storage rooms to repair. Among the salvage was a cracked pensieve. Having a shared secret made Draco trust Cyrus more. "If you want to keep studying alchemy, you should take runes in third year," Cyrus advised. Modern alchemy relied more on tool-making and rune work than the ancient alchemical arts Draco had been poking at, and runes would make his work far more practical. The school hadn't yet announced course choices, but Draco began to consider it seriously. Meanwhile, Dobby was in torment. Ever since he had stolen Ginny's diary, he had been racked with guilt and dread. He had thought of every way to warn Harry, but nothing prepared him for one terrible discovery. The one whose name must not be spoken was alive. Voldemort had not been destroyed. He had survived whatever happened 11 years ago. Dobby clutched his hands and trembled. Harry Potter had narrowly escaped once. Now he might face a danger far worse. Master must leave Hogwarts, Dobby muttered to himself, terrified. At Hogwarts, Harry and his friends had been searching for the diary with dogged determination, but weeks had passed with no sign. They suspected everyone until suspicion became numb routine. Slytherins and Gryffindors alike had been eyed. Ginny shrank under the strain, at first overwhelmed by grief, then by a slow, sucking despair. "I'm afraid we'll never find it," Ron announced gloomily one afternoon, sounding like a man who had given up. "And have you noticed? The attacks stopped. Maybe something happened we don't know about. Maybe Riddle used his own trick to stop the heir." His words implied that Tom Riddle had sacrificed himself to stop the evil within Ginny. Ginny sobbed, and in a fit of grief, kicked Ron up and stuck him to the ceiling with a hex. Ron hung there, dangling and speechless. Fred and George, oddly unconcerned, had other theories. They had nearly mapped every secret passage in the castle and suspected the heir could not have used the Marauder's map to bring harm. Even if someone had the map, it would be useless in the wrong hands. The halt to the attacks supported that. They tried to cheer Ginny in their own eccentric ways. Percy did not approve when they burst from behind statues wearing fur or leapt out covered in conjured boils. Harry's search had to be set aside. Wood had put the team through relentless Quidditch training. After dinner, Harry spent hours on the pitch, returning to the dormitory, looking like a drowned rat in the cold, rainy weather. Ron was exhausted and fell asleep as soon as his head hit the pillow. The real strain on morale came from Gilderoy Lockhart. In a bid to lift spirits, he organized a Valentine's Day event. His Little Cupids, a parade of pompous, over-adorable students, would read aloud anonymous love notes. Harry was grateful he hadn't received anything embarrassing, but Ron was incandescent with jealousy and suspicion. He was sure Hermione wasn't immune to Lockhart's charms, and muttered that one of the dozens of cards must have been hers. "That Gilderoy Lockhart," Ron snapped. "I've never seen anyone worse." Malfoy wasn't spared either. He used Lockhart's class as an excuse to mock Dumbledore's hiring choices. "My father was right. Dumbledore's gone soft. Look at the defense against the dark arts professors he's picked. Worse every year. Last year it was a stammerer, and this year, he might as well be an embarrassing actor." If there was one good thing about Lockhart, Draco admitted, it was that the man liked to put him in skits. Lockhart always roped Harry and Draco into comedic bits, and Malfoy enjoyed watching the Scarhead make a fool of himself, up to a point. But the Valentine's show made his skin crawl. He was popular in Slytherin. The idea of being publicly flooded with anonymous declarations was mortifying. "If anyone writes me a card and makes me a laughingstock, I'll teach her a lesson," he declared with sharp dignity. That was enough to deter Pansy Parkinson from sending anything. At lunch, Draco complained to Cyrus, whom he had come to treat as a real friend. Draco affectionately called him Little Tom. Cyrus, older than Lucius even, reminded him dryly, "I'm older than your father. Even he must show me respect. You can't call me Little Tom." Draco waved him off. "We'll sort out titles later. He calls you uncle. I'll call you big brother." To be on the safe side, Draco promoted himself in the family hierarchy. Cyrus, for his part, was content to be Draco's intimate friend. "I think this could work in your favor," Cyrus said with a small smile. "You should use the occasion." "What do you mean?" "You hate Potter, don't you? Why not send a card, anonymous, to him? Write something ridiculous. His eyes are as green as a freshly pickled toad, or something. Let the great Harry blush." Draco's eyes lit up. "Yes, put that on the card, and make the Cupids read it out in Snape's potions class." Cyrus blinked and typed a question mark. "Do you know what side of Harry Professor Snape is on?" Malfoy waved a hand as if Cyrus had missed the point. "If Potter gets embarrassed in front of Snape—" "You're not getting it," Cyrus cut in. "Snape hates Harry with a passion. If something publicly humiliating happens to Harry in Snape's class, the fallout won't be confined to Potter. Snape can find the sender. He'll make them wish they'd never been born." Draco's grin faded. He had been picturing a perfect public mortification of Potter. He had not considered that Snape's fury could turn the prank back on its author. To insult Harry's eyes in front of the potions master? That was courting danger, and Snape had the sort of grudge that could make an offender's life miserable. It wasn't certain who would come to harm, but it was certain that the consequences would be ugly. And so the usual school news moved on. More Quidditch drills, more anxious discussions about the diary and the peculiar pageant of Lockhart's Valentine's Day, each episode feeding gossip and irritation. For Draco, the day closed on the same note he'd been entertaining lately: grand schemes that teetered on the edge of disaster, all of it watched as if by a rolling camera in a never-ending documentary about his antics. The legend of Draco Malfoy, it seemed, continued to air. Chapter 48. Neither good nor evil is pure enough, hence the suffering. Draco Malfoy put his plan into motion during Charms that afternoon. He'd hoped to follow it with a prank in potions, but their last potions class had been yesterday, so he had to make do with what he had. All through Professor Flitwick's lesson, he waited for the moment, his black diary tucked into the upper left corner of his desk. Today we'll continue with the freezing charm. Professor Flitwick announced from a stack of books, his small stature made up for by boundless enthusiasm. "The incantation is Immobilis. Do not confuse it with Glacius, although you haven't learned that one yet. Normally, the freezing charm only works on moving things. However, hey you, Harry Potter!" A squat, grim-faced fellow burst into the classroom and cut Flitwick off. Every head turned. The intruder was about Flitwick's height. Harry felt his stomach drop. Receiving a Valentine's in front of everyone, with Malfoy watching, was unbearable. He wanted to claw his way out of his seat, but it was class. He couldn't simply flee. A ring of the intruder's companions had already closed around him, hemming him in. Ron and Neville, who sat beside him, were shoved aside too. Harry looked at Ron, pleading. Ron's face was a mix of panic and helplessness. On the podium, Flitwick hid his face with both hands, clearly mortified. Across the room, Malfoy grinned the widest grin Harry had ever seen. "I have a musical message for Harry Potter," the intruder declared, and began plucking his harp with exaggerated flourish. "Not here," Harry whispered, nearly begging. "Stand still," the man growled, grabbing Harry's bag to keep him from bolting. "Let go," Harry shouted and jerked hard. With a ripping sound, his bag tore in two. Books, the wand, parchment, and quill spilled to the floor. The ink bottle cracked and leaked across the parchment. Harry scrabbled for his scattered things, trying to collect them before the singing started. The room was a mess of confusion, and then the singer's voice cut across the chaos like a knife, Malfoy's laughter ringing behind it. "What's this?" Malfoy asked in a tone that was all cold disdain on the surface and triumphant glee underneath. He had been waiting for this. The singer crouched on Harry's knees as if it were a theatrical flourish. "All right," he said, and launched into a ridiculous loping ditty. His eyes are as green as a pickled toad, his hair is as black as the classroom board, the scar on his head is as magical as lightning. I wish he were mine. He's handsome and sweet. He's Harry Scarhead. Enough! Professor Flitwick finally exploded. The mild little man could no longer bear it. He'd had enough of insults and disruptions in his classroom. With a flick of his wand, he struck the floor near the singer's feet. A fist-sized crater opened, scattering dust and throwing the singer back. At once, the harper and his entourage fled, but the damage had been done. Harry wanted the earth to swallow him. He would gladly hand over every galleon in Gringotts to vanish from sight. He forced himself to laugh along with the others, an act that felt like torture, since the loudest, most satisfied laugh in the room belonged to Malfoy. Laughing while Malfoy laughed felt worse than anything. "This isn't a real confession. It's definitely Malfoy's doing," Harry blurted out. "You've got a point," Ron agreed, looking rueful. "It's maddening. We should have thought of that to get back at him." It was too late now. Their last class of the week had ended. Malfoy would return to the Slytherin common room with his victory. Harry couldn't concentrate. He kept watching Malfoy through his anger-laced glasses. Malfoy lounged against his desk like a man who just had a very good day. He took out a black notebook and began to write. It was too far across the room for Harry to make out the words. Across the page in Malfoy's notebook, words appeared as if in response. "I don't think Potter liked your Valentine's gift." Cyrus, the voice inside the diary, read it. "My gift to Harry Potter?" he thought, rolling his eyes. Who on earth could be that fond of Potter? He answered the scrawl in a neat hand. "Not me. It's you." I bet his face was priceless. Exactly. Malfoy practically exuded giddiness through the ink. He must have thought the morning couldn't have gone better. What he didn't know was that somewhere else, someone had seen everything he did. Which was fortunate, since a black notebook like that was too common to arouse immediate suspicion. Harry, having heard Ginny describe one such diary earlier, didn't find it particularly curious. They'd already decided Malfoy couldn't be the thief. All Malfoy could manage, it seemed, were petty pranks. He had plenty of malice in his heart, but it rarely amounted to much in action. Later that night, however, Malfoy's bravado had to be carried somewhere else, the Chamber of Secrets. "Are we really going to kill someone?" Draco's voice trembled in the cavernous gloom. Before him hovered a tall, handsome, translucent figure, no more than a shadow given form. It was Cyrus, the thing from the diary. Through feeding on Ginny's and Malfoy's life force over the previous weeks, the entity had been able to project a shadow of itself beyond the paper. The experience had given it renewed vigor, but it had also cost a great deal of power. Even so, Cyrus preferred to meet face to face with those he wished to possess. It made the control easier. "I don't think we need to," Draco began. "Are you afraid?" Cyrus mocked. "Like last time, are you going to be a coward?" "I'm not afraid. It's just—" Draco's chest heaved. He had tried to be bold in front of this, what he pretended to call his friend. He wanted to appear superior, to prove himself. But standing here, with the great serpent bowing its head and the air thick with the chamber's cold breath, Draco found his courage ebbing. The truth was he felt a kind of raw, animal fear, the sort of fear that made his hands shake and his throat tight. Cyrus's translucent finger darted out and pinched the wand Draco had tucked into his pocket. He examined it slowly, as if the wand itself were revealing secrets to him. A fine wand. Hawthorn, he mused, with a unicorn hair core. Hawthorn? Draco echoed. "A curious, contradictory wand," Cyrus said, as though lecturing. "Like the tree itself, its leaves and flowers can heal, yet a cut branch can carry the scent of death. And unicorn hair," he added, the words tasting like distaste. "Nothing is less suited to the dark arts. Draco." Cyrus slid the wand back into Draco's grip, but did not let go of the mood of scrutiny. He looked uncomfortably close into Draco's eyes. "You look very tormented." Draco should have objected, argued, denied it. He could not. Confronted with this specter, all charm and menace and an eerie familiarity, he had no words. The boy who'd once idolized Tom Riddle couldn't bring himself to speak truthfully now. The image had become a stranger while still feeling intimately known. Cyrus's assessment was a needle that found its mark. "Neither your good nor your evil is pure enough," the spirit said, voice turning soft and distant like song carried on water, "and that is the root of your suffering." His hand rested on Draco's shoulder, the contact physically cold, as if the touch belonged to someone who had never been alive. The voice rose and fell with a hypnotic cadence, half promise and half command. "What you cannot do, I will do." The phrase scraped at Draco. He had wanted glory. He wanted to be more than he was before his father and his house and the whole world. The implication that someone else would finish what he could not made something inside him twist. "Draco Malfoy," Cyrus whispered, as if speaking a binding charm, "give your body to me." Silence swallowed the cavern for a beat. The serpent lowered its head further, its eyes like oil lanterns. Draco could feel the pull of the thing in the diary, like a tide dragging him under. He had sought power and validation. Now it was pressed upon him like a contract inked in frost. He wanted to shout no. He wanted to run. But the cold certainty in Cyrus's voice, the authority of a creature who had once been whole and dangerous, made the thought of resistance thin and brittle. Draco, breath shallow and trembling, understood what was being asked. To refuse could mean humiliation and failure. To accept might mean losing himself entirely. And Cyrus, patient and imperious as the grave, waited for the answer he expected. Neither good nor evil is pure enough. Cyrus's words echoed in Draco's head, and suddenly that doctrine, cruel and absolute, seemed to remove the last of the boy's defenses. Draco Malfoy, the whisper came again, steady and irresistible. Give your body to me. 49. Modify memory. Cyrus had seized control of Draco's body the moment he sensed a weakness. But he didn't immediately unleash the basilisk or attack. There were more pressing things to do. From his conversation with Draco, he already knew that Dobby the house elf had taken the diary and given it to Draco. Ginny still retained memories of the diary, and if Dumbledore or anyone else probed her mind, Cyrus could be exposed. He needed to find out whether Ginny had told anyone about the diary, and then alter their memories. He had no immediate plan to return to Ginny. The original sequence of events no longer needed to be followed exactly. As long as he could get Ginny into the Chamber of Secrets at the end and stage a confrontation with Harry Potter, the rest could be adjusted. But fate had other plans. As he stepped out of the common room and rounded a corner, he ran straight into 4 people lying in wait. 4 voices shouted, "Expelliarmus," at once. Ron's wand backfired and blasted him off his feet, while the other 3 spells hit Cyrus and knocked the Hawthorn wand from his hand. Cyrus could still perform magic without his wand, but the interruption forced a change of plans. "Haven't you had enough, Malfoy? Give Ginny's diary back," Hermione snapped, wand pressing at his chin with the kind of cold fury that made it obvious she'd punch him if she could. Ginny trembled beside her. "Hurry up, or I'll make you taste slugs," she cried. "Don't try to lie. Harry saw you take that diary in class," Ron added, flattened backside and all. Cyrus didn't panic. He met Ginny's eyes and spoke softly. Wait, I'm not Malfoy. It's me, Riddle." "Mr. Riddle?" Ginny's wand dropped a fraction as surprise and relief lit her face. "How did you possess Malfoy?" Hermione, Harry, and Ron all looked stunned. It was hard to trust anything from a face they'd come to hate. "So you're Tom Riddle?" Hermione said, incredulous. "That's right," Cyrus nodded. "You remember when someone possessed Ginny to steal the ingredients for Polyjuice? That was me, possessing her." "It was you?" Ron said, astonished. "But how did you end up in Malfoy's hands?" "We all thought the heir stole you," Harry said, baffled. "Malfoy isn't the heir, and he doesn't know who the heir is. Why would he steal you?" "He thought he was helping the heir," Cyrus explained. "He found evidence I was looking for the heir and realized there was something, an imprint, inside the diary. So he stole it, hoping to be useful. He didn't expect I could seize control of him." Hermione's face tightened at the cruelty of Cyrus's methods, but Harry and Ron were oddly pleased. Ron sauntered over and put an arm around Cyrus, then lowered his voice. "I've got to say, you're a lot more agreeable than Malfoy. I heard you helped Ginny with her homework." "There were a few times," Cyrus admitted. "I thought she didn't really need some of those assignments." "I have a lot of homework, too," Ron protested, brimming with misplaced camaraderie. "Ron!" Hermione yanked him back angrily. Ginny stood close by, suddenly looking wounded. "If you could control Malfoy, why didn't you come to me?" Cyrus had intended to tell the truth, that he had planned to come and then to modify everyone's memories. But he dialed that back. "It's too dangerous," he said quietly. "I think the heir has already detected my presence, even if he hasn't found me exactly. If I return to you, I could bring danger to you. And I'm using Malfoy's body, so it won't look like I'm his enemy." "We're not afraid," Ginny said, stubborn. Harry immediately echoed her. Ron looked like he wanted to admit he was scared but swallowed it. Hermione broke in, practical as ever. "One person can't solve this alone. We'll help. You've worked with us." Cyrus studied her for a long moment, then feigned reluctance before nodding. "All right, I'll let you join me. But first, Ginny, you haven't told anyone else about the diary, have you? No, Ginny said. Only Hermione and the others. Good. Cyrus retrieved his wand from where it had skidded across the floor. I must alter your memories. I'll erase what you remember about the diary and replace it with something harmless. I know you wouldn't betray me, but the heir might use legilimency. If he sees my true form in your memories, it would be far too easy for him to find and kill me. Ginny looked suspicious and a little afraid. You promise you won't make us forget everything? I promise. Cyrus's voice was calm. Only the memories concerning the diary will be modified. 50. All the abandoned people found a home here. After altering Ginny's and the others' memories, Cyrus finally felt there was nothing left to worry about. No one would know his true form was just an ordinary diary. Harry and the others were briefly dazed, then they completely forgot the modification had even happened. So Mr. Riddle, have you found anything? Do you know who opened the Chamber of Secrets last time? Harry asked eagerly. He wanted answers so he could find the real culprit and clear his name. After his Parseltongue was revealed and Justin was petrified, nearly everyone suspected him. Ginny said that 50 years ago, when the chamber was opened, you caught the culprit. It was me, but you might not want to believe that, Cyrus answered carefully. What does that mean? We need the truth, Mr. Riddle. We can't let the heir keep doing harm. There must be some connection between the person who opened the chamber 50 years ago and the current one. Harry protested. If you want, I can show you, Cyrus replied. You don't need to hear me tell it. I can take you into my memory, the night I caught him. But how? Find an empty classroom and wait for me there. Cyrus had gone to great lengths to erase the diary from their memories, so he wouldn't bring it out in front of them. Coincidentally, he had found a broken pensieve in the room of requirement and had repaired it. It was originally a little toy I prepared for Draco. I didn't expect it to come in handy now. With the pensieve in hand, Cyrus used the Marauder's map to pinpoint Harry and the others and hurried to them. How did you know where we were? Ron asked in surprise when Cyrus found them so precisely. His attention was quickly drawn to the object in Cyrus's hand. Are you going to wash your face? This is a pensieve, Hermione said, eyes wide. What is a pensieve? It's an alchemical device that stores thoughts and memories, Cyrus explained. He tapped his wand to his temple and drew out a thin silver thread of memory. It lets you and others view events from a third-person perspective, like watching a movie. He placed the silver thread into the pensieve and stirred. The thread dissolved into a clear, glassy pool. Follow me. Cyrus entered his memory first. He fell through a cold, dark current, as if sucked into a vortex. What do we do? Ron hesitated, watching Cyrus vanish. Follow him, Harry said without thinking. Ginny was already the second to step into the pensieve, then Harry, Hermione, and finally Ron. Before they could fully register what was happening, they were somewhere else. They recognized the circular room with loudly snoring portraits on the walls, Dumbledore's office. But the man behind the desk was not Dumbledore. He was a frail, shriveled wizard with only a few white hairs on his bald head, reading a letter by candlelight. Harry had never seen him. That's Professor Dippet, Cyrus told them. He was headmaster of Hogwarts 50 years ago. Cyrus spoke aloud, as he always did, which set Harry and the others on edge. Should we be quiet and hide? Harry whispered. No need. They can't see us. This is just a memory. We're like I am, Cyrus said, and only then did they relax. The old wizard sighed, folded the letter, stood, and walked past them without looking. He tugged open the curtains. Outside, the sky was streaked with red. It was near sunset. He returned to his desk, fidgeting with his thumbs and glancing at the door. Someone knocked. Come in, the headmaster said weakly. A boy of about 16 entered, took off his pointed hat, and set it aside. A silver prefect badge gleamed on his chest. He looked exactly like Cyrus, tall, black hair, black eyes. This is me, Cyrus said, though the others could tell. He's a lot better looking than Lockhart, Ron muttered, elbowing Hermione. She flushed. Ah, Riddle, Dippet greeted him. You wanted to see me, Professor? Riddle asked, a trace of nervousness in his voice. Sit down, Dippet said. I've just been reading the letter you gave me. Riddle sat, fingers clenched. My dear boy, Dippet said kindly, I cannot allow you to remain at school over the summer holidays. Surely you'd prefer to go home. No, Riddle answered immediately. I'd rather stay at Hogwarts than go back to. You stay at a Muggle orphanage during the holidays, don't you? Dippet asked. Mr. Riddle, you never told me. Ginny looked at Cyrus with sympathy, sadness on her face. She had not known Mr. Riddle had such a past. It's nothing, Cyrus said, shaking his head. He didn't want pity. Those were his true feelings. Empty sympathy meant nothing. Harry felt that more than anyone. He recognized the loneliness. The similarities in their lives made him feel closer to Tom Riddle, as if they were brothers separated by 50 years. Are you Muggle-born? Dippet asked. I'm a half-blood, Riddle replied. My father was a Muggle. My mother was a witch. Your parents? My mother died shortly after giving birth. At the orphanage, they told me she only had time to name me Tom, after my father, and Marvolo as my middle name, after my maternal grandfather. Dippet clicked his tongue, sympathy written on his face. The thing is, Tom, he sighed, we had planned to make special arrangements for you, but under the present circumstances. You mean the attacks? Riddle asked. Harry leaned in, straining to catch every word. Precisely, Dippet said. My dear boy, you must see how foolish it would be to let you stay in the castle after term ends, especially after the recent tragedy, the little girl who died. You'd be much safer at the orphanage. To be honest, the ministry has even considered closing the school. We still have no clue as to the source of these unfortunate events. Riddle's eyes widened. I didn't want the school closed, Cyrus said quietly, his voice calm. So I had to hand over the culprit, even if he didn't intend to kill. Harry could feel Riddle's thoughts in the memory, the desperate need to protect the school that had been the first warm refuge for so many homeless children. Hogwarts had been the only home he'd ever known, the best home. He and Tom Riddle and the other abandoned boys had all found a home there. Thanks to a certain gentleman, 9527, for the 500-point reward. Thank you, darling. Chapter 51. The Heir. Sir, if that person is caught, if everything stops. What do you mean? Professor Dippet snapped, rising from his chair. His voice had an edge. Riddle, are you saying you know something about these attacks? No, sir. Tom Riddle answered quickly. Professor Dippet sank back into his chair, visibly disappointed. You may go, Tom. Riddle slid from his seat and left the office. Several students followed him. They wound down the spiral staircase and emerged into the dim corridor by the gargoyles. Riddle stopped. The others stopped too, watching him. Cyrus felt oddly unsettled. He had seen this memory countless times, but never while watching it with others. Never while the memory's owner looked so exactly like the Tom Riddle who had once been a student here. In the memory, Riddle looked grave, biting his lip, furrowing his brow as if weighing something terrible. Then, as if he'd made a decision, he hurried away, with the group silently trailing him. They passed through empty corridors and reached the entrance hall, where a young wizard waited at the top of the marble staircase. What are you doing, Tom? Wandering around so late, the man asked. It's Dumbledore, Ron blurted. They all stared. 50 years younger, Dumbledore had flowing auburn hair and a long beard, his cheeks smoother than the Dumbledore they knew. The gray wash of the memory made everything feel like time itself, a strange theft of the past, watching moments that did not belong to them. Harry said nothing for a long moment. 50 years ago, Dumbledore's face was not the kindly, twinkling mask Harry remembered. There was a tiredness in it, as if the man had walked out of a storm. Cyrus, who knew the histories, understood what had hollowed him. Grindelwald was still at large then, pursuing the grand plans of his youth, and the rift between the two men had already begun. In a few years, the world would mark the day the closeness between them ended. Ginny, who remembered the first time she'd met Dumbledore, felt this scene matched that night. The same penetrating, sorrowful gaze. The constant was his eyes that could see through people. I just wanted to see the headmaster, Riddle said. All right, off to bed, Dumbledore replied, fixing Tom with that particular look. It's best not to wander the corridors these days, since it has already. He sighed, wished Riddle good night, and walked away. Riddle watched him go, then slipped down stone steps toward the dungeons. He did not take a hidden passage or secret tunnel. He went to the potions classroom where Snape taught. The torches were unlit. Riddle stood against the door, peering out into the corridor. For an hour, he remained motionless, a statue waiting. Cyrus could see the impatience building in Ron. From the doorway, they could only just make out Riddle's silhouette, watching. "Don't be impatient," Cyrus murmured. The one who opened the Chamber of Secrets was hiding here then, he and the creature he kept. Their patience paid off. They heard faint movement outside. Someone crept past the potions classroom. Riddle slipped through the crack and followed. They tracked after him, hearing a door creak. A hoarse whisper came through the gloom. Come out, come here, into the box." Hermione frowned. This air's voice, there's something familiar about it. They saw a dark figure of a large boy squatting before an open door, a big box beside him. The recognition came into focus when Riddle and Hagrid in the memory fell into argument. "Good evening, Rubus," Riddle said, stony. "It has to stop. I'm going to report you. If the attacks don't cease, they're discussing closing Hogwarts." "I know you're not saying he meant to kill no one," Hagrid replied, backing up to the closed door. "But beasts aren't pets, you know. Maybe you just let him out for a bit o' exercise." "It never killed anyone," Hagrid shouted, throwing himself against the door. Harry heard skittering and clattering from within. Riddle moved closer. "The dead girl's parents are coming tomorrow. Hogwarts must at least deal with the thing that killed their daughter." "It wasn't," Hagrid roared, his voice echoing down the corridor. "It wasn't. It wouldn't. Never." "Out of the way," Riddle said and drew his wand. At that instant, the corridor flashed with light from his spell, and the large boy's face was revealed. "It's Hagrid!" All the watching students gasped. They did not want to believe it, yet the memory left no doubt. Riddle's spell struck, knocking Hagrid back and forcing the door open. Something massive and hairy darted out so quickly it was almost a blur. Riddle raised his wand again, but the creature bolted past, slamming into him and sending him sprawling. Then it crashed down the corridor and vanished. Ginny and Hermione drew back, shaken. Cyrus watched closely. He knew Riddle had intentionally let the beast loose in that moment. The way a victim is left by an acromantula was not the same as the basilisk's work. Riddle got to his feet and raised his wand, but Hagrid lunged, grabbed it, and knocked him down. "No!" Hagrid bellowed. His rough plea shattered the memory, and the watching group fell silent, stunned by what they'd seen. Hermione, frowning, spoke first. "Mr. Riddle, couldn't you have the wrong person?" Cyrus tried to steer them toward the broader truth. "He may not have meant to kill, but Hagrid has always had a weakness for dangerous creatures." He did his best to defend the man's character while keeping the focus on the monster. That thing escaped then. It could have been brought back by someone else. "But," Harry began, wanting to defend Hagrid outright. He thought of Hagrid's warmth, his love of monsters, the dragon in Hagrid's hut last year, the three-headed dog Fluffy. Hagrid had always been reckless in the service of curiosity. 13-year-old Hagrid would have wanted to collar and leash any creature he found. Harry was sure Hagrid would never intentionally kill. Ginny broke in with a memory that hit home. "Remember that book you let me borrow? Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them? The Ministry marks the most dangerous creatures XXXX. You scribbled in the margin, or anything Hagrid likes." Ron tried to take another tack. "You sound like Percy. Who told you to report Hagrid?" he complained. "I know Hagrid's a good person," Cyrus said quietly, "and that's why Dumbledore vouched for him. But I couldn't just sit by if more attacks might happen. After Hagrid was expelled, the attacks stopped. If Hogwarts closed, I'd be sent back to a Muggle orphanage. I'm sure you understand wanting to stay here." Harry did. They all sat with the weight of it. None of them wanted to be the person who condemned Hagrid, and none could dismiss the evidence of something dangerous loose in the castle. After an awkward pause, Hermione asked the question that hovered over them all. "Shouldn't we ask Hagrid about this ourselves?" "That would be a nice visit," Ron said wryly. "Hello, Hagrid. Have you let out any savage, hairy things lately?" They let the question hang unanswered, and in the end, said nothing. 52. Wandless casting. The truth had been revealed, and yet it settled into another unspoken secret. Everyone felt a weight in their chests, a little breathless. Everyone except Cyrus. He returned to the Slytherin common room, already planning when to resume the attack preparations. He reminded himself how the fourth and fifth attacks had come almost simultaneously before, and how those two blows had almost forced the school to close. Closing Hogwarts outright now would be too obvious. It had to be gradual, so people believed the situation wasn't dire, and best of all, so Dumbledore could be persuaded to leave quietly. That would make everything much easier. He still needed to make more contact with Lucius. Cyrus sank into a sofa, legs propped up, murmuring to himself. A moment later, a tall, burly boy loomed over him, looking from a distance like a green gorilla. Marcus Flint scowled. "Malfoy, why are you still here? Get to practice. If we beat Ravenclaw, we still have a chance." Last season, Slytherin had lost to Gryffindor, despite having the best brooms and a clear advantage. Malfoy had been too busy taunting Potter to focus on the game and missed the chance to catch the snitch. Flint had never forgiven him for it. But what could he do when Malfoy's father sat on the board of governors and the family donated the team's brooms? Slytherin still needed to beat Ravenclaw by a large margin, by more than 300 points overall, to stay in contention for the cup. And practically he knew they had to be well ahead before the snitch appeared, at least by 150 points. The broom difference was hard to beat, but Malfoy's lack of commitment since that loss had infected the team. Even if he trained, he didn't take it seriously, and the others started slacking off too. With that attitude, winning would be difficult. When Marcus found Malfoy lounging, he snapped. "Malfoy, I made an exception to make you our seeker, not so we'd lose." He strode up to Cyrus, angry features twisting. "Because of you, our seeker's quality is worse than other teams. You understand we can't get more than 150 points ahead before the snitch if you keep this up? If you keep this up, I'll have you off the team." Marcus fumed and jabbed a finger into Cyrus's chest. Cyrus, who loathed being ordered around, slapped the finger aside. "Don't point at me, Marcus Flint, or do you want me to hang you from the ceiling?" He didn't just dislike being bossed. The body he occupied belonged to Draco Malfoy, and Cyrus meant to protect his bosom friend. He wouldn't let anyone bully him. Marcus's face flushed crimson at the insult. He'd been humiliated before. First year, Ginny Weasley had once hung him up in front of everyone, and he reacted violently to any mockery. "You dare insult me?" he snarled and drew his wand. "I'll teach you a lesson, Malfoy. I'll cover your face in pimples and make your teeth stick out like that mudblood from Gryffindor." Cyrus laughed. The worst these Slytherins could imagine was spots and long teeth. Almost childish. Cyrus had in fact been considering a worse prank, hoisting Marcus by the ceiling, pulling down his trousers, and dunking his head in a toilet. But now, he decided to make the point cleanly. Without bothering to draw his own wand, Cyrus flicked his bare hand. A crimson light shot out and knocked Marcus's wand from his fingers. He caught it easily. The wand was blackthorn, and its cord didn't feel like unicorn hair. It handled more smoothly than Draco's awkward wand, and Cyrus suspected a dragon heartstring or nerve lay at its center. "Densojo!" Marcus's front teeth began to erupt and lengthen painfully, his gorilla-like face stretching into something grotesque. He howled as his mouth was forced open by the relentless growth, barely able to make a sound. The other students in the common room had noticed. Panic spread. Cyrus didn't mince words. He cast again, and dark, clustered spots bloomed across Marcus's face like a smear of black paint. Marcus writhed on the floor in pain. "Learn your lesson," Cyrus said coldly, then slid back into the sofa and found a comfortable position. "I won't be coming to Quidditch practice, but I'll play in the match." Practice felt pointless. This semester's matches would be shaped anyway, but he wouldn't let Draco be benched. Not for that. By then, Snape had arrived, expression grim. He took in the scene. Marcus Flint rolling on the floor, other students keeping their distance from the boy lounging on the sofa. Flint hung from the ceiling once, he thought. Now he was flattened by Malfoy. Snape knew how much Lucius Malfoy had done for him in the past and had watched over Draco closely since the boy entered Hogwarts. He knew Draco's capabilities. It seemed odd that Flint could be beaten so completely. After confirming Marcus wasn't grievously injured, Snape ordered 2 students to take him to the hospital wing, then fixed his eyes on Cyrus. "What happened, Malfoy?" "Nothing," Cyrus said, spreading his hands and looking Snape straight in the eye. "This morning I was sitting here, and Flint came up telling me to get to practice. He started threatening me, said he'd cover my face in pimples and make my teeth as big as Miss Granger's. He threatened me first, Professor, so I defended myself. I used Expelliarmus that you showed us in the dueling club. Snape's tone held the faintest edge of surprise. He'd only demonstrated Expelliarmus once and hadn't expected anyone to pick it up so quickly. Cyrus simply nodded, keeping his mouth shut about the fact he hadn't used his wand at all. Next time something like this happens, come to me directly. Snape's face remained hard. I promised your father I would look after you. Don't give me any trouble. Cyrus nodded obediently. He had no intention of revealing more than necessary. 53. Hot hell. Another failure. Cyrus stared at the potion in the cauldron as its bright red color bled into black and a fresh burst of irritation flared up. He had lost count of how many times he had failed to refine the Philosopher's Stone. That didn't include the countless simulations he'd run in his memory. He had followed Nicholas Flamel's notes and the 22 processes compiled from others' experience to the letter, and still failed. What other secrets lay in the Book of Jewish Abraham? What unknown variables had existed when Flamel succeeded? What was the so-called essence? Questions multiplied in his head until it felt like it would split. He knew that brooding now wouldn't help. It would be a waste of time. Cyrus waved his hand and made everything in the room of requirement vanish. Since alchemy had stalled, he might as well practice spellcraft. He took out the Grimoire of the Red Dragon, the Grimoire of Solomon, the Grimoire of Raziel, and the Compendium of Dark Arts, those forbidden tomes. Forbidden books were forbidden because they contained terrifying, potent magic and because their content was obscure and hard to interpret. Fortunately for him, Cyrus's talent for spellcraft exceeded his skill in alchemy. The Grimoire of the Red Dragon recorded methods to revive the dead, but when Cyrus analyzed them, he realized they described building inferi, not true resurrection. How to create inferi was already recorded in Lord Voldemort's memory. The book's method differed and might be more efficient, but Cyrus disliked necromancy. Inferi made decent cannon fodder, but were brittle against large fires, and most powerful wizards in this world had devastating fire magic. Dumbledore had his ancient Gryffindor fire and the fiery path, Grindelwald had his blue fire techniques, and even an earlier Voldemort could conjure fiend fire. Still, Cyrus wanted to make his own flame. Coincidentally, the Grimoire of the Red Dragon contained the demonic flames of the Red Dragon and the ice flames of the White Dragon. The Grimoire of Solomon described a kind of hellfire. He planned to combine several magics with fiendfire. A hellfire from the Grimoire of Solomon made his heart race. Protection charms, defensive spells, apparition, enemy trapping spells. Add them to the flame. Grindelwald's fire shield combined many spells. In raw destructive power, it couldn't match fiendfire, but it was far more versatile. Its ability to raise a city was incidental. Its true purpose was to distinguish true followers from others. Cyrus wanted both power and precision, preferably more. Inventing new magic thrilled him. Failure was inevitable, but not final. The worst outcome was a magic that didn't meet expectations. Not failure, just a step toward success, he told himself. When he'd tried replicating Grindelwald's fire shield, the hardest part wasn't grafting defensive spells onto a flame. It was teaching the flame to tell friend from foe. The complex spell behaved like a program, an if condition branching into commands. Once the flame identified targets, the instructions would dictate different behaviors. Burn everything for enemies, protect believers, fully defend allies under attack. Now he understood why Fire Shield's power paled beside Fiendfire. Magic in this world drew heavily on the caster's emotions. Fiendfire was pure madness. Its only function was to burn, consume, and spread. That absolute destructive will was what made it so devastating. Fire Shield, by contrast, required control and a heart leaning toward calm rather than frenzy. Two opposing emotional poles had to be balanced, and that balance limited raw power. Still, if forced to choose, Cyrus preferred the Fire Shield approach, precise and controllable. There was no need to use a nuclear bomb when a bullet would do. Kill enemies, spare hostages. Inside the room of requirement, Cyrus held Flint's wand and walked in a slow, measured circle like a conductor. Blue flames sparked and spun around him, forming a widening cyclone until the room's interior shimmered with blue fire. He felt no heat, only a pleasant warmth, like strolling through a green field. Fire Shield, he intoned. The flames danced like ghostly bluebells in the wind. Even after replicating Grindelwald's signature skill, Cyrus wasn't satisfied. He wove in several transfiguration spells, and ghostly blue demons rose among the bell-shaped fires. Then he poured in the red and white dragon fires from the grimoire of the Red Dragon and the Hellfire, Inferno Fire Jade, from the grimoire of Solomon. The flame's color shifted instantly. The lovely blue dulled, soaked in red, until it looked like the color of coagulated blood. The bluebells withered, their petals collapsing into cold ash, but on those ruins, blood-colored mandalas bloomed, leaving a trail of fiery sigils in their wake. A new fire magic was being born. Curses and demonic flames layered into the construct, compensating for any deficiency in Fire Shield's destructive force. Of course, deficiency was relative. It was still a curse powerful enough to raise Paris. Then a thought struck him. What if he added the Inferi creating curse? He disliked Inferi, but the psychological effect of a fallen comrade rising from flame to fight on would shatter opponents' beliefs. He opened the grimoire of the Red Dragon and grafted the Inferi creation ritual into the construct. In an instant, the curse completed itself. Even Cyrus felt a chill at its cruelty. First slay the enemy, then command their corpses to rise and fight their former allies. It was a vicious, coldly efficient magic. Even Lord Voldemort might admire the cruel ingenuity. Even Satan might offer him a smoke. The thought flashed, darkly amused. Cyrus felt a flicker of resistance, not to the spell's mechanics, but to the evil within himself. Still, the spell existed now, and even if he never used it, it deserved a name. He thought of Bleach, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni Zanpakuto that recalled the dead. Its Bankai, Zankano Tachi South, Kakajumanakushi Daisojin, performed a similar feat. That name was unwieldy, so Cyrus chose a single punchy title, Inferno. Thanks to Mingya Mujikshu for the 1,000-point reward. I found another job, but it's much harder than the last one. I can't slack off on writing novels anymore. Boo-hoo. Dumbledore hurried to the hospital wing without even bothering to straighten his beard. Minutes earlier, he had seen Professor McGonagall's Patronus, a silver tabby cat, so he already knew something was wrong. "Minerva, Phileas, how is it?" he called. From the entrance, he could see McGonagall's worried face, and Phileas Flitwick, equally concerned despite being barely half her height. Lockhart, as ever unable to resist the limelight, was already fussing about. The same as before, petrified. McGonagall's shoulders squared the moment she saw Dumbledore approach. The injured student was Penelope Clearwater of Ravenclaw, an excellent scholar and a prefect. Percy Weasley found her in an empty classroom on the 4th floor this morning, McGonagall said. Dumbledore stepped into the hospital wing, and the other professors followed. Madame Pomfrey was bending over Penelope, removing something from the girl's hand, a small mirror. Dumbledore immediately understood how Penelope had escaped the basilisk's gaze. Cyrus, he realized, had learned from earlier mistakes. After discovering that the portraits around the castle served as Dumbledore's eyes, he had stopped letting the basilisk roam the corridors. Now the creature was kept in the pipes, only released at the moment of attack. Cyrus himself had gone to greater lengths to hide. That explained the sudden strikes. "This is already the 4th attack, Albus, and 3 students have been injured," McGonagall said, worry etched across her face. "I'm afraid we can't keep this quiet. What did the Board of Governors say?" "No reaction yet," Dumbledore admitted. He had expected they might move to close the school, but so far they had not. Perhaps no one had died. Perhaps someone thought it not yet the time. "That's for the best," McGonagall said, "but we must find the culprit." "We will, Minerva," Dumbledore whispered. His face was nearly unreadable. He let his calm mask the thoughts behind it. "If I remember correctly," Lockhart piped up at the first opportunity, striking his most heroic pose, "you grandly announced that the heir had been driven away by you about 2 weeks ago." "Gilderoy," McGonagall said flatly. Snape's voice cut across Lockhart's vainglorious prattle. He had appeared almost as suddenly as a shadow, sneering. "If I recall correctly, you claimed to have driven the heir away a fortnight ago," he repeated, and then strode to Dumbledore's side. He bent close and lowered his voice. "This morning, Ginny Weasley didn't go anywhere. She stayed with Potter and the others the whole time. But," his tone dropped almost to a hiss, "she lost something." Those 2 words sharpened Dumbledore's thoughts. He had already instructed Snape to keep an eye on Ginny when he first suspected something was wrong. If something had been taken from her, then perhaps Lord Voldemort, or whatever fragment of him remained, had detected the surveillance and deliberately withdrew from her, turning instead to controlling other pupils. And the thing Ginny had lost? It could only be the Horcrux. The idea fit too neatly to dismiss. Snape shook his head when Dumbledore searched his eyes for confirmation. Legilimency was not omniscience. Ginny's and the others' memories had been altered by Cyrus, so they could not recall the loss. Snape could not say for certain what had gone missing. Dumbledore turned the small mirror over in his hands, thinking. 50 years ago, Tom Riddle had taken Myrtle's life. Accident or no, the result had been murder. But since then, from Madame Norris to Penelope, no one had been killed by that monster. The flooded bathroom, the altered camera, the ghost, the mirror. Taken alone, each incident might be explained away. Taken together, they were not coincidences. Someone was deliberately avoiding fatalities. Dumbledore dismissed the idea that Tom Riddle had suddenly grown compassion. The more reasonable explanation was strategic. He did not want the school closed. 50 years ago, Tom had reasons Dumbledore could understand. Now, what drew him back? After a moment, the answer crystallized. Harry Potter. If a fragment of Tom's soul, housed inside a Horcrux, had learned, perhaps through Ginny, that Harry had once defeated you-know-who, that fragment would want to study the child who had bested his master. It would seek the boy out. That motive made sense of the pattern of attacks. Each one had steered suspicion toward Harry. On Halloween night, the first attack occurred while Harry was absent from the feast. The second victim was Colin Creevey, who took embarrassing pictures of Harry. The third was Justin Finch Fletchley, caught by Filch at the very moment. All the evidence pointed at Harry. Tom Riddle must be trying to embroil the boy in trouble, to drive him to investigate the Chamber of Secrets and the heir, so they could meet alone. Dumbledore recognized the shape of the trap. Tom was playing chess, using students' lives as pawns to remove obstacles and force a confrontation with the boy. If Dumbledore's calculations were correct, the pressure would soon force him out of Hogwarts by other means. Yet he was not overly alarmed. Tom had chosen his pieces, believing his opponent merely a frightened second year. Dumbledore thought that was a grave miscalculation. He trusted that Harry would not be so easily underestimated. 55. You're quite a nice person. The next morning, when news of Penelope Clearwater's attack swept through Hogwarts, many students whispered that Harry Potter had gone mad. He only started by attacking those who opposed him, and now he's targeting all Muggleborns. Ernie Macmillan told everyone within earshot, as if it were settled fact. He was nearly certain Harry was responsible, and went so far as to invent a story about Harry commanding the monster. He even wondered why the professors hadn't expelled Harry yet. It's like Ernie saw it with his own eyes, Ron muttered, rolling his eyes to defend Harry. I swear, most of the rumors are coming from him. Cyrus arrived late to Charms, having deliberately shaken off Malfoy's two lackeys. With no empty seats left, he had to sit behind Harry and Ron, in the same row as Hermione. He put on a look of reluctant annoyance for anyone watching, but quietly leaned toward Hermione and whispered. Hermione's face flushed. She kept seeing Mr. Riddle from the Pensieve in her mind. When did you start controlling Ginny? She asked, lowering her voice and blotting her cheeks. It didn't begin long after the school year started last year, Cyrus replied. From the Quidditch match last semester after Colin Creevey was petrified, until Christmas, I was mostly in control. Why? Nothing. Hermione's face burned even redder. Cyrus felt the heat from her embarrassment. She changed the subject, poked Harry with her quill, and slipped him a note. What should we do? Maybe we should go to Hagrid and get to the bottom of this. Harry shook his head. Hagrid couldn't possibly know who opened the chamber this time. The real reason was more painful. The idea of accusing Hagrid felt unbearable. He remembered how Hagrid had once rushed to his defense. Hagrid trusted him, and Harry couldn't bring himself to doubt him. We can at least find out what that monster in the chamber is, Hermione insisted. Cyrus didn't want to involve Hagrid either. After all, his current identity was Riddle, the one who had framed Hagrid and helped send him to Azkaban. Not many people knew the truth about that year. Hagrid might not know Lord Voldemort's real nature, but any meeting would be tense and likely painful. He reached out and intercepted Hermione's note. "Let's wait," he said, taking it. "There may be another way. I don't think the professors will stand by. Hagrid didn't do those things back then, and reopening those wounds now would be cruel." Harry looked at Cyrus with genuine gratitude. "Mr. Riddle, I didn't expect you to be so kind." Hermione still looked uneasy. "But what if someone else? If someone else gets hurt, we'll go to Hagrid," Cyrus said firmly. "We'll make everything clear." Meanwhile, Fred and George were arguing elsewhere in the castle. "What if someone else gets hurt? We must go to Dumbledore," Fred insisted, for once serious. "But then our secret will be completely exposed," George objected, frowning. "There's no difference between that and being exposed anyway," Fred said. "Think about it. The heir stole the Marauder's map. Do you expect him to give it back after he's used it? Now there's another victim, and a prefect at that. Look how scared Percy's been these past 2 days. We have to do something." George fell silent, but his doubts were already shifting. Fred was right. If the heir used their map to attack students and then got away with it, they'd be accomplices, and the chances of recovering the map were slim. If telling the truth to Dumbledore could help catch the heir, what did they have to lose? "Besides," Fred added with a grin, "if the information we give is useful, maybe we'll be the ones who caught the heir." George's smile widened. It wasn't just about being heroes. It was the thought of watching Percy work himself into a frenzy that amused them. The two of them set off together for Professor McGonagall's office. "Professor, we have important information about the heir," they announced as they burst in. "The heir?" McGonagall's stern face tightened. She stood up and fixed the two mischief-makers with a look. "George, Fred, do you understand this is not a matter for jokes?" "We wouldn't joke about it," they protested. "Of course not. There isn't a more well-behaved pair at Hogwarts than us." The twins put on injured expressions. "You haven't been well-behaved since the first day you arrived," McGonagall said, but she still led them toward the headmaster's office. "Listen, if you so much as joke about this, I'll be writing to your mother to have you taken home for a term." "Don't worry," they chorused. McGonagall moved to the gargoyle and gave the password. "Jelly slugs," she said. "You two go up on your own," she added, hands clasped, as the spiral staircase began to rise. Fred and George practically skipped up. The staircase opened into the headmaster's office, a roomy circular chamber filled with curious, noisy instruments. Small silver devices spun and puffed gentle wisps of smoke on a long-legged table. Portraits of previous headmasters and headmistresses lined the walls, snoozing softly in their frames. At the far end, a great table with clawed legs dominated the room. Dumbledore was leaning over it. He looked up in surprise when he saw them. "What can I do for you two?" he asked. "We have something important to report, sir," Fred said. "It's about the hair." 56. 7 Secret Passages. Something important? Dumbledore looked even more surprised than before. He had been sitting there, puzzling over what Ginny Weasley had lost, or rather what the Horcrux might actually be. He hadn't expected 2 visitors. "Must you tell me now?" "We thought it best to tell you before the next attack," the twins said, shrugging in unison. That caught Dumbledore's attention. If this mattered to the attacks, maybe the confusion that had been troubling him would be cleared up. "Please, have a seat, gentlemen." He rose and personally poured each of them a cup of black tea. "Take your time. Tell me the whole story. Don't leave out a single detail." "This matter is a little connected to our sister," Fred began. "Professor, you might not know, her dormitory was broken into not long ago. Something very important was taken," George finished. "It's a magical item." "Oh, I just happened to hear about that." Dumbledore smiled. "So you know what she lost?" Who would have guessed the answer to the riddle he'd been worrying over would be standing before him? That dark thing, the Horcrux, was about to reveal itself. Dumbledore's eyes showed anticipation, though his expression stayed calm. "Of course we know. Actually, it was ours once," the twins said at the same time, which only made Dumbledore more puzzled. "Yours?" "It's not exactly ours, but we discovered its secret," they corrected. Dumbledore sat forward, eager. "Please, tell me everything." They had no choice but to start from the beginning. "You found a Marauder's map in your first year, right? It can show the location of everyone in the castle?" Dumbledore listened as the twins explained. It wasn't the Horcrux he'd suspected, but another remarkable magical object, one that warranted immediate attention. That's right, Fred said. It even shows names? Dumbledore asked, clarifying. Everyone's name. Fred and George nodded together. Made by Padfoot, Prongs, Moony, and Wormtail. Brilliant chaps, made it for anyone determined to break school rules. But now that map has probably fallen into the hands of that hare, George said. That's our worry. Ginny wanted to use the map to find the attacker, but shortly after, her dormitory was ransacked, Fred added. If the attacker has the map, he can plan his attacks better. Or hide himself. George put in. Your concern is well-founded. Dumbledore agreed. I'm very glad you've shared this with an old man like me. His eyes twinkled. He had long suspected who had made the map, but not that Remus Lupin and his friends had been capable of such cleverness. A map that marked everyone's movements, even his own, was dangerous in the wrong hands. If the heir got it, he could track people and pick the safest route out of Hogwarts. Who would be able to find him then? Let me confirm, can the Marauder's map only mark people inside the castle? Dumbledore asked. That's right, Fred replied, but it doesn't show every single location inside the castle. For example, the Chamber of Secrets doesn't show up. Clearly the four Marauders didn't discover the chamber, Dumbledore said lightly. Hogwarts is always full of surprises. Now, if someone wanted to leave the castle, what secret exits are there? There are 7 in total, the twins replied. Filch knows 4 of them, though we doubt the attacker would care about Filch. Of the remaining 3, one is behind the mirror on the 5th floor, and another is behind the statue of the one-eyed old woman. That one goes straight to the cellar of Honeydukes. We used those 2 when we snuck out. Hey, George, Fred smacked George on the head. Sorry, I let it slip. Don't worry, I won't punish you for it. Dumbledore laughed. A little adventure keeps life interesting, doesn't it? A kindred spirit, they cried in exaggerated unison. The last one, George continued, we think not many people have used. It's near the Humping Willow. If the air is strong enough, he might not care about the willow, unless he minds making a lot of noise. Dumbledore knew that passage well. He had planted the Humping Willow himself, and had prepared the passage beneath it for a special student. The twins believed the violent tree would stop anyone from escaping, but Dumbledore thought differently. If the heir were capable, he could subdue the willow. A competent dark wizard could quiet it. As soon as he touched the right place on the tree, that fearsome willow would go still. You've given me information of the utmost importance, Dumbledore said, sincere. This may decide whether we can finally catch the attacker. It's nothing, the twins said, pleased to have helped. In return, Dumbledore promised with a playful wink, if I recover that map, I will return it to its rightful owners, into your hands, and I will keep this secret until you graduate. Really? Really. After seeing Fred and George off, the relaxed expression left Dumbledore's face. He returned to his chair and bowed his head in thought. Which secret passage would the heir choose? Or could they possibly stop that boy? I'm the captain. Attacks did not resume until March. The mandrakes, which had gone quiet, grew rowdy again, staging a raucous dance in Greenhouse 3 to Professor Sprout's delight. They were expected to be fully mature in another month or 2. Once they were, those who had been petrified would finally be awakened. Cyrus was pleased too. Resurrection felt increasingly inevitable, and the joy in his chest was beginning to shape itself into a Patronus. Vague, but still recognizable as a giant bird in flight. Once the mandrakes matured, he thought, he could steal a leaf, and after the victims were revived, he could try to become an animagus. Voldemort had little use for such tricks. He looked down on animagi and cared even less for ordinary creatures. Cyrus felt differently. An unregistered animagus was a symbol of freedom to him. That morning, he sat at the Slytherin table, eating breakfast and reading a letter from Lucius Malfoy. Lately, he'd been corresponding with Lucius in the Malfoy family's manor, and at times he'd used Riddle's name to press Lucius to act faster. But the Hogwarts governors insisted their families were as influential as the Malfoys, so things couldn't be rushed. He also needed to pick the right moment to coordinate with allies and push the ministry, enough pressure to get Hagrid sent to Azkaban for a few days. Cyrus had liked Hagrid when he'd been in Ginny's body. The giant was affable and genuine. For the sake of resurrection, though, Cyrus was willing to inconvenience him. He told himself, almost convincingly, that Azkaban was a fine place, full of colorful language and, if he squinted, dark arts talent. He speared a sausage with his fork and ate, telling himself it was a necessary cruelty. What Azkaban? Why are you still sitting here? Isn't it Slytherin versus Ravenclaw today? Ginny ran over, seeing him alone, and relaxed. She hadn't cared much about the Quidditch scores before, but things had changed. Mr. Riddle had become Slytherin's seeker, and she wanted Cyrus to win, despite the rest of the Slytherin team being insufferable. Quidditch match? Cyrus raised an eyebrow, realizing he'd nearly forgotten. Marcus Flint had ordered him to train for it not long ago. I just forgot. He stood up. No wonder so few people are having breakfast today. Cyrus had never been a Quidditch fanatic, but since he'd come to this world and taken Draco's body, leaving the game unplayed felt like a gap. There might not be another chance. It was about the experience. They walked toward the Quidditch pitch. Most of the stands were already full, binoculars bobbing everywhere. Even the raised seats didn't always give a clear view. Are you nervous? Ginny asked in a small voice. Surrounded by so many students, her stomach felt like it was floating. What's there to be nervous about? Cyrus shrugged. With what he'd already faced, Dumbledore, and the kind of danger where one mistake meant death, Quidditch was nothing more than a diversion. Still, it would be fun to win. They split at the entrance. Cyrus went straight to the Slytherin locker room. The match wasn't until 11, but the team was assembled, and the Seeker was there. Terrence Higgs, last year's Seeker, stared at Cyrus as if he'd seen a ghost. Surprise quickly curdled into fear. Malfoy, you, how could you? Terrence stammered, gripping his broom so tight sweat beaded on his palm. Marcus Flint, still nominally the captain, looked flustered. After Cyrus had publicly punished him in the common room, few Slytherins wanted to cross Cyrus. His strength was obvious, and with Dean Snape's tacit protection, he could strike without repercussion. I was told you wouldn't be playing Quidditch anymore, so I? Terrence babbled, shifting blame to Marcus, which, in part, was true. Cyrus turned to Marcus. I said I would play. Is your hearing bad? He produced a wand, Marcus's own wand, now in his hand. Want me to fix that for you? At the sight of the wand, the whole team took an instinctive step back, retreating as if broomsticks could hide them. Marcus could only grit his teeth. But you haven't been to practice, he protested. I said I'd come, Cyrus replied coolly. He reached out and plucked the Nimbus 2001 from Terrence's hands. Sorry, I'm flying first this time. You can go next. After giving the little snakes a reminder of how dangerous he could be, Cyrus eased off. He'd cultivated this unbending persona on purpose. If he didn't make them feel a little fear, they'd never take him seriously. He didn't want constant trouble, only respect. He felt a twinge of pity for Terrence, such a fine-looking fellow, having to surrender his broom before it was even warm. But that was the way of things. All right, I'm in charge now, Cyrus said, buoyant. It felt a bit like trying a roller coaster or bungee jumping, something he'd never been into, but once was worth doing. And if he was going to play, he intended to win. Wait, I'm the cap, Marcus began, but Cyrus cut him off, voice flat. Not anymore. I'll lead you to victory, Cyrus added without glancing back, already imagining the match. By the way, he asked, as they filed out toward the pitch, who's on the Ravenclaw team? Thank you for the 1,000 reward to Mingyu Mujikshu and the 300 reward to Xuan Shaodi. Thank you, darlings. You're finally here, Ginny. Hermione stood and waved at the late arrival. They were seated at the far end of the stands, where the view was best. A little distant, but Hagrid's kindly lent binoculars let them see the pitch clearly. You're too slow, Ginny, Ron grumbled. Where did you go? To find Riddle, Malfoy, Ginny said as she sat down beside Hermione. He really did forget today was the Quidditch match. I knew it. He doesn't look at all interested in Quidditch, Hermione observed with an almost smug expression. He prefers studying, books even I don't understand. Alchemy, runes, you two should learn from him. The last sentence was aimed at Ron and Harry. Harry gave an awkward laugh. Ron immediately changed the subject. Honestly, I never imagined I'd be cheering for Slytherin. If someone said that to me a year ago, I'd have smacked them awake. But if Slytherin actually wins, Harry, you'll have to face their Nimbus 2001 again. He said it half jokingly, half ready to boo. What are you saying? Mr. Riddle is our friend, Ginny blurted angrily. Fortunately, the stands were packed, nearly 1,000 spectators, and with about 800 cheering for Ravenclaw, the noise was so loud no one overheard them. Harry, though, wasn't worried. The chances of winning are very small. Quidditch isn't just about having a fast broom. As far as I know, Riddle, Malfoy hasn't taken a single practice, has he? I think he just wants to try it out. It's a rare chance. Let's support him. Hearing that, Ginny and Hermione exchanged worried looks, convinced Cyrus would make a spectacle of himself. Don't worry, Ron noticed their faces. Anyway, no one could possibly fly worse than Malfoy. They all laughed together. In truth, Malfoy could fly quite well, just a touch below Harry, but better than most. The problem was that he seemed more intent on showing off against Harry than on finding the snitch. His eyes were glued to Harry rather than scanning the air. Look, the Ravenclaw team's coming out, Hermione said suddenly. Harry craned his neck. He remembered Ravenclaw's seeker was a girl. He hadn't paid much attention last year, but seeing her a few times recently had made him realize how pretty she was. How strong is Ravenclaw? Hermione asked. She wasn't a huge Quidditch fan and had only watched Harry's matches last year. Not bad. Conservatively, they're in the top 4 at Hogwarts, Harry said seriously, diplomatic and measured. In reality, Ravenclaw was a little weaker overall, but the gap between the top teams was small. Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw weren't usually favorites to win. If Slytherin doesn't play dirty, we've still got a shot, Harry added, glancing at Cho. She's really cute, isn't she? Simp, get a grip. Don't forget who we're here to cheer for. And if you liked her so much, why didn't you confess on Valentine's Day? Ginny reached over Hermione and smacked Harry on the back of the head, snapping him out of his daze. If I'd confessed then, I'd really have no hope, Harry complained, rubbing his head. He found himself missing the shy Ginny from summer. On the pitch, Ravenclaw's captain Roger Davies, an authoritative figure, was briefing his teammates. Be careful. Slytherin plays rough. Don't get injured. They even changed their brooms this year, Chaser Jeremy Stretton said gloomily. We're in trouble. Don't be like that. At least their seeker's terrible, Cho replied with a smile. If Harry Potter can win, so can we, and we can do it beautifully. That's right, Roger said. Change. Your job is the snitch. Jensen, Duncan, protect Chang and stop Slytherin's fouls. Randolph, Jeremy, the 3 of you attack. Score as much as you can. Grant, guard the hoops. Sounds easy, Jensen said. Oh, please, Jeremy muttered. He just repeated everyone's roles. The Slytherin team's out, someone announced. The Ravenclaw players watched as a line of bright green robes took their places on the opposite side, Slytherin's colors standing out on the field. What surprised them was Marcus Flint, who should have been leading, cowering at the back. In his place stood Malfoy. His pale hair gleamed in the sun. From a distance, it almost made him look balder than he was. Malfoy? What's this? Did Slytherin change captains? Of course, money talks. If my dad could buy Nimbus 2001s for the whole Ravenclaw team, could I be captain too? Randolph said enviously. Shut up, Roger shot back, itching to hit him with a broom. If Slytherin really had Nimbus 2001s for everyone, giving up the captaincy might be sensible. But that seemed unlikely, and there was no point in idle chatter with a strong opponent before them. Madame Hooch stood in the center of the pitch, whistle around her neck, and raised her right arm to call both teams forward. Roger, familiar with match routines, led Ravenclaw to her. On the other side, Cyrus, reminded by his teammates, also stepped up to Madame Hooch. Listen, she said, looking sternly at both sides. Her eyes lingered on Marcus Flint standing unusually at the back of the line, then shifted to Cyrus. Whatever she thought of him, she made sure to warn him too. I want everyone to play fair and honestly. I am the fairest, Cyrus replied, lifting his chin. Very well, everyone mount your brooms. Cyrus swung up onto his Nimbus 2001. Madame Hooch blew her silver whistle sharply, and the game began. Malfoy, Malfoy, our king! The match had begun. 15 brooms shot skyward at once, and the Slytherin team was clearly faster than Ravenclaw. But speed was only part of the game. True skill was shown in agility, control, and timing. Cyrus Malfoy had cheated from the start. He'd cast an occlumency on himself so he didn't have to rely only on his eyes. He could use magic to locate the golden snitch. That way he wouldn't miss it because of a blind spot. Calling it cheating was not strictly accurate. Quidditch rules forbid wands, but don't explicitly ban other magic, and wizards capable of casting difficult charms without a wand were rare. Once his God's Eye was active, the job got much easier. Cyrus shot straight up to the very top of the pitch, almost as if he were leaving the game. Taking advantage of the speed gap, Slytherin launched a fierce offense. For Ravenclaw to win now, they would have to prevent Slytherin from scoring and catch the snitch before the point gap reached 150. Cho Chang's task was suddenly much harder. Adrian Pusey had already slammed the quaffle through a hoop, 10 points. Marcus followed with another attack. Keeper Grant managed to bat the quaffle away that time, but Randolph failed to intercept Graham, Slytherin's third chaser, and Slytherin scored again. The score climbed, and the pincer maneuver that Roger tried. Roger and Jeremy flanking Adrian while Randolph charged head-on to force him to give up the quaffle was risky. 3 players on one left Slytherin's other chasers unmarked, but Roger had little choice. If Ravenclaw didn't score soon, the gap would widen. He was banking everything on Grant to hold the goals and on the 2 beaters to disrupt Slytherin with the bludger. Jason and Duncan did their part. Combining their efforts, they sent the bludger speeding toward Graham, who had been trying to support Adrian. Graham ducked instinctively, but the bludger didn't pass harmlessly over his head. It struck the tail of his broom, jolting him off balance. He tumbled like a stone, plunging toward the ground. Gasps rippled through the stands. Even fans who normally despised Slytherin felt their stomachs drop. A fall from that height could shatter ribs, or worse, snap a neck. Jason and Duncan looked pale. Madame Hooch, the referee, remained her usual aloof self. Only Professor Dumbledore rose from his high seat, silently lifting his right hand and beginning half a spell. Cushioning. A green bolt of magic stabbed down the air, cutting across the screams. And then Cyrus dove. He hurled himself almost vertically, squeezing every ounce of speed from his Nimbus 2001. Most players never pushed a broom to its limits on a small pitch. Full speed left no room for braking, but Cyrus was doing just that. Slytherin green blurred past as he plummeted. Blink, and he would have smashed into the stadium at nearly 100 miles an hour. The result would have been disastrous. Malfoy as a very unappetizing biscuit. The wind slapped his cheeks. He reached out and grabbed Graham's arm, casting multiple cushioning charms to stop the limb from tearing from its socket. When the broom tip scraped the ground, it sounded like a crack. Cyrus leaned back with everything he had, yanking on the control as if it were an airplane yoke. The wooden tip of the Nimbus filed a groove into the pitch and snapped off, the polished handle flying away and shattering a timber beam. The broom, shortened, still responded. Cyrus hauled it back up into the air. He had saved Graham. For a long, breathless half-minute, silence hung across the stadium, as if someone had muted the world. Then the crowd erupted, cheers and shouts rolling through the clouds. Even the Gryffindor boys, who often sneered at Slytherin, found themselves swept away. George and Fred Carey threw caution to the wind, shoving aside 2 nearby students as they waved and screamed. "Malfoy, our king!" Harry and Ron stared, slack-jawed. "I didn't know he could fly like that," Ron said in admiration. "He could make the team. He could win the World Cup." "No," Oliver Wood interjected from the sidelines, eyes shining. "He could go down in history." 60. Surprise and victory. "Malfoy our king! Malfoy our king! Malfoy our king! History will remember this day forever." The Quidditch stands were a sea of fanatic voices. Professor McGonagall looked as if she might faint. The contagious excitement swept through even the students who normally couldn't care less about Quidditch. Hermione, to her own surprise, found Cyrus inexplicably handsome. If only he were wearing Mr. Riddle's face, she thought. She might send him a love letter on the spot. Instead, he wore Malfoy's features, and that was maddening. On the pitch, the players were quieter by comparison. Graham was soaked in cold sweat. Relief and lingering fear mixed on his face as he muttered thanks to the boy on the broom. "Thanks, Malfoy. Don't mention it. Time to fight back." Cyrus patted him on the shoulder with more force than the small frame required, and the 2 of them rose together. The broom he rode was a section shorter than normal and a little unbalanced, but it was serviceable for finishing the match. Jensen and Duncan flew over, apologetic. "Sorry, Graham. You didn't break any rules," Cyrus said before Graham could flare up. Hearing that, Graham subsided, and the referee, Madame Hooch, drew a long breath and blew her silver whistle. Play on. 14 players resumed the match. Cyrus, bored of hanging in the sky as a spectator, gripped the broken portion of the broom handle with both hands and subtly shifted its trajectory. He was only a seeker and couldn't score with the quaffle, but the rules didn't forbid a seeker from interfering with the other balls. It simply never happened in ordinary matches. No seeker would abandon the snitch to chase the quaffle unless he didn't want to win. Randolph had just snatched the quaffle from Adrian, and Cyrus cut in from the left. Cho Chang, convinced she'd glimpsed the snitch, followed at once. Seekers sometimes develop blind spots. If the golden snitch doesn't show, they watch their opponent's every move. So when Cho saw Cyrus launch, she pursued without hesitation. With occlumency engaged, Cyrus could feel changes in the airflow behind him and the sound of another broom slicing the air. He didn't need to look to know Cho was closing in. When she came to collide shoulders with him, Cyrus executed an inverted hang, tilting his body downwards. For a moment, he and Cho were mirror images, pressed tight together like reflections in the sky. The maneuver was unheard of in school matches. Cho had no time to worry about novelty. She peered forward, searching for the golden flash, but saw nothing. "Where's the snitch?" she shouted. "The golden snitch?" Cyrus replied, hanging upside down, baffled. He hadn't sensed it at all. Had his occlumency failed? He hadn't noticed the snitch appear. "Who said the snitch was here?" he asked. "No one forbids flying through here." Cho was furious. A seeker who ignored the snitch felt like an insult. Was he implying she couldn't find it? Still, she had to admit the boy's flying had been extraordinary. The inverted hang, the sudden turns. Malfoy in this match was nothing like the Malfoy she'd seen before. She found herself wondering how much training Malfoy had undergone. If he kept improving at this rate, he might become a world-class Quidditch star. Maybe she should ask for an autograph later. But there was a match to play. Cyrus's shadow-like flying made her uneasy. Although the contact had been minimal, she'd felt constrained. She pulled up her broom to break away from the parallel orbits they'd been tracing. Meanwhile, the scoreboard widened. "Slytherin has scored again," Lee Jordan called, rapturous. "The score is now 90-20. Slytherin leads by 70 points. Marcus Flint again. Another goal. I didn't expect them to play so well when they kept it fair. It seems Mr. Malfoy's generous broom has helped." "Lee," McGonagall snapped, and Lee changed tack. "Cho Chang has broken away from Malfoy's inverted flight. It was putting a lot of pressure on her. Truly spectacular. But doesn't Malfoy get dizzy? Can Cho snatch the snitch before the gap reaches 150 points? The snitch still hasn't appeared. Now it has. Malfoy has found it. They're climbing. Cho is following." Lee's voice made everyone's hearts jump. A green blur shot up like a rocket. Blinding sunlight made it hard to see. Most students looked up and saw nothing but glare and cloud. Harry squinted and, at a distance, saw a trembling dark speck. The snitch. "If I hadn't seen him fly past, who would have found the snitch?" he exclaimed. "He'll be the greatest seeker in the world." "He won't," Ginny said, shaking her head. "Mr. Riddle won't make Quidditch his career, Harry. It won't matter to him." Harry couldn't quite grasp that. Quidditch was everything to him. It was the one place he felt worthwhile, where cheering crowds meant something different and truer than those who called him the boy who lived. He let his thoughts drift, then a chorus of gasps brought him back. "What's wrong?" he asked. Ginny and Hermione were too tense to speak. Ron gripped Harry's forearm like a lifeline. "The broom's in trouble." Harry snatched Harry's binoculars from Hermione and looked. Through the lenses, the broom in Cyrus's hands was shaking violently, as if it were about to come apart. It must have been damaged when he saved that player earlier. It's a miracle it's still flying. "He has to stop!" Hermione's face had gone pale. "Stop! He's still accelerating." Ron looked as if he'd seen a ghost. "If that broom falls apart at that height, he'll plunge to his death." Ginny went white. "We have to stop the match." Hermione leapt to her feet and pushed toward Dumbledore, but the stands were packed. Too many students rose and blocked the way. She wouldn't even make it out of the Gryffindor section before the broom failed. Cyrus, for his part, understood the danger better than anyone. A faulty broom wasn't something you could fix with a quick mending charm, and even if he couldn't cast spells beyond Malfoy's apparent skill in full view. But the thought of quitting never crossed him. He was a transmigrator. He had inherited the Dark Lord's soul, and pride wouldn't let him lose to a little girl. Besides, the broom might hold a little longer, and if it didn't, there were ways to save himself. Dumbledore wouldn't stand by and watch a governor's son fall. Even if Dumbledore did nothing, Cyrus had methods, some shock mitigation, adjust the landing posture. A broken arm in the wizarding world was a minor inconvenience. It wasn't his pain he worried about. So despite the wobbling, he pushed harder, faster. The snitch's dark blur sharpened ahead of him. He reached and felt tantalizingly close, but his fingers slipped past it. He'd forgotten. This body belonged to Draco Malfoy. The sudden lunge broke the broom's balance entirely. The damaged broom pitched and shook like a wild horse. Cyrus cast a handful of spells to steady himself, and when he put weight on his right foot, he snapped the metal footrest clean off. Half the rest fell away and nearly struck Cho Chang. "You have to slow down, Malfoy," she shouted, staring in horror at the broom's tail where the bristles were loosening. They flew into a thick cloud. Even a damaged Nimbus 2001 had more speed than the old broom in Cho's hands, and she lost sight of him in the mist. The 1,000-strong crowd craned their necks into the sun and cloud. Then the cloud opened and a dark figure plummeted. Dumbledore saw it and reacted instantly. The figure was Malfoy, and his performance today had been extraordinary to an abnormal degree. There was something uncanny about the show, yet Dumbledore did not suspect Tom Riddle. He knew Tom well enough to know that the boy would never be so ostentatious without guaranteeing his own safety. And more importantly, Tom Riddle would never save someone. Cyrus's previous rescue of Graham removed him from Dumbledore's suspicion. The Dark Lord took lives. He did not rescue them. As the figure fell, Dumbledore raised an arm and intoned, "Arresto momentum." A gentle force pressed at Cyrus's back and slowed his descent as if he were falling onto layers of wool. He felt the reprieve and let himself relax, no longer trying to fight it. Madame Hooch dropped down and blew her whistle. Cyrus fished the golden snitch from his pocket, triumphant even as he steadied for landing, and was swept off the field toward the hospital wing amid a roar of cheering. They carried him away like a hero being born in victory, as if the best celebration for his hospitalization was to cheer him all the louder.